What's up guys, I'm the Viking. Welcome back to the channel if you're new here, hello, and this has been, all told, a really shitty week. There is no way for me to continue these videos without addressing the elephant in the room. So the whole reason I started this channel and started doing these videos was to document my life and what I was up to and what I've been doing. And the biggest thing that I've been leaving out of these videos is my political views, for obvious reasons. I don't want this to become a political rant channel, but with the things that have happened this week in the UK, I can't not talk about politics. And as much as I'd like to show you the progress I'm making on the new tank for Project Outlaw, I can't, because it's on the floor over there, and the graphics that I showed in the last video haven't cut very well, so I'm redesigning the graphics and have done a new design, and I'm not sure if I like it or not, and I'm thinking, why do I bother? And I think the big reason I'm thinking why do I bother is because of what's happened this week in British politics. And for the first time in my entire life, I'm actually embarrassed to be British. And that's something I never thought I'd ever say. Hello, Yuki Dog. It's a political video. Yes, it is. Say hello to the people. Yes. Can I make my video now? Can I do my video now? Can I do my video? Can I please do my video? I honestly thought the people of Britain were smarter than this. For those of you who know me outside of these videos and who, you know, have been friends with me for a while, you know from my Facebook posts on my personal page recently that I'm leaning pretty hard left on politics these days. I don't have a lot of time for a lot of the mainstream media. I don't have a lot of time for the majority of politicians. Any politician that sways even remotely right-wing comes off as massively spiteful and hate-filled, in my personal opinion, and that is pretty much universal across all the parties. There is a lot of misogyny and homophobia and transphobia and racism and xenophobia on the right side of politics, and that's kind of always been the way. It used to be the leanings of the far right. Now these days I don't know whether the goalposts have just shifted or whether the far right is becoming more mainstream for whatever reason, but it seems that hatred and fear of things that aren't the same as you are the norm. So my voting history has been kind of varied. Most people tend to go more conservative the older they get. I've gone the exact opposite way. I used to be very centralist, and as I said, these days I'm leaning quite far left. But I haven't always been this far left. When I became old enough to vote here in the UK, the legal age for voting is 18, I voted Lib Dem. And then when I moved to Wales, I've been voting Plaid Cymru, because they were the parties that, out of all the lies they were all throwing out there, they were the ones I could stomach the best, and the more out there ideas that weren't going to come to fruition weren't as horrible as the other parties, and that's why I voted for them. As much as I like to think myself a bit of an anarchist, I do believe that if you don't vote, you can't complain about the outcome. And then over the last few years here in the UK, there was the referendum on Brexit. It wasn't a vote on Brexit, it was a referendum. It was a advisory polling of the people, and 52% of people said we should leave the EU. Or should I say 52% of people who voted said we should leave the EU. 48% of people who voted said we should stay, and the same amount of people who voted didn't vote at all. Which in my mind says that more people said they didn't want to leave because they didn't vote to leave. They either voted no or they didn't vote at all. And the margins are so fine at 52% and 48%. that it should have been null and void, because it was such a close call that in any other kind of democratic system it would have just been said, no, there is no real majority here, it is a 50-50 split, and therefore we keep with the status quo. That's the way it should have been. And if it was a landslide vote for leave, then I would still be annoyed, but I would have gone, right, okay, it's a strong majority vote, we have to go with it. So for the last 4 years, since the Brexit referendum was held, the Conservatives have been dragging their feet and making stupid deals to put forward to the EU that were never ever going to get passed by any party, let alone the ones here in the UK and the 27 nations in the EU that would have to agree on it. It was never ever going to happen, and Brexit was never going to be a simple we're leaving on this date. It's too complicated. There's 50 plus years of negotiations and contracts and legislation that has to be waded through. It's not as simple as we're going. It doesn't work that way. The real world doesn't work that way. Since the referendum, there have been 3 different prime ministers. There was David Cameron, who brought all this shit show upon us. Then there was Theresa May, who buggered about and pushed it back and pushed it back and pushed it back until we ended up in real serious issues with the negotiations. And now there's Boris Johnson. So since the last general election, there have been 3 different prime ministers, 2 of which the British people did not vote for. And the Conservative government has been in power here in the UK for the past 9 years, and on Thursday just gone we had our general election. And the Conservatives won with a majority of 38%. And as you can probably tell from my demeanour and the fact that I've still not spoken very much about Project Outlaw, I'm not happy. Because here's the kicker. There's only a handful of reasons to have voted for the Tories, and most of them aren't very good, because a lot of what the Tories have promised they should have implemented by now after being in power for 9 years. The ideas and the manifestos that they've put forward should have happened years ago, but they haven't. And the Tories have a track record here in the UK, sacrificing the working classes for the sake of big business. And what's really upset me is I thought at the very least the North would remember what they did. I thought that the way that the people of Northern England were treated by the Tories in the 70s, and the similarities between the Tory party now and the Tory party then would be enough to overcome some of the other reasons why people have voted Tory. I thought that they remembered the miners' strikes, the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were sold out by Margaret Thatcher and the Tory government. The Tories have always been about the few, the haves. They've never been about the have-nots. They've never been about making Britain a better place for everyone. They've always been about making things better for them. And there may well be hundreds and hundreds of reasons why people have voted the way that they've voted, regardless of who they voted for. That is their right. They can vote for whoever they want to vote for. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is the party that people have voted for was the worst choice for all of us. You see, this general election can all be summed up by 3 main things: Brexit, the Labour leader, and the NHS. Those are the 3 big sticking points in this year's election here in the UK. Now, I'll get onto the whole Brexit debacle in a minute, but let's talk about Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of Labour. The reason a lot of what would be traditionally Labour areas here in the UK have ended up voting for the Conservatives and Boris Johnson is because there are people who don't like Jeremy Corbyn, because he has been portrayed for years in the media as an IRA sympathiser, because he went to meetings involving IRA leaders. He was seen in public with IRA leaders, and he was shown to be in talks with IRA leaders. So he has been portrayed as a IRA sympathiser and a lover of terrorists. And this is what has really annoyed a lot of people this time round, because every politician talked with the IRA leaders at the time because it's their job. It was their job to broker a peace between Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, because it was their job to talk to them. They were our elected officials. That is how peace talks are done. The only way that a peace could be brokered between the IRA, Ireland, and the United Kingdom was through talks, and the idea that a politician who spoke with IRA leaders at the time was a terrorist sympathiser was ludicrous then, and it's ludicrous now. Every politician at the time spoke with IRA leaders because they had to. It's how a peace was brokered, and that peace is now standing to be shattered. And the reason this gets me so wound up is because when I was a baby, because of the IRA, I very nearly wasn't here. I very nearly was wrapped up in the Warrington bombings. In fact, I've been told by my mum that the day of the Warrington bombings, we were in Warrington. And moreover, the bomb that claimed so many lives there, 10 minutes before that bomb went off, I was sat on that bin as a baby while my mum sorted out cleaning my clothes or putting my shoes back on or something along those lines. I was 10 minutes from being killed by the IRA. And that's not hyperbole, that's fact. I was lucky. I was phenomenally lucky. I was so close to not being here. And the reason that the peace between Ireland and the United Kingdom could all fall apart links into something I'm going to talk about in a minute. The third major thing that's been on everybody's talking point in this election is the NHS. And again, this links in with Brexit and the Tories and Boris Johnson. The NHS is the United Kingdom's most valuable asset. The National Health Service is a truly amazing thing. Everyone who works and everybody who earns enough in the UK to pay national insurance pays an amount out of their paycheck every time they get paid, and that goes in part to the National Health Service. And it means that if you're in a car accident, an ambulance comes, it picks you up, it takes you to hospital, doctors and nurses and care workers perform what are essentially miracles and save hundreds of thousands of lives a year. And they are doing some of the most advanced surgeries and therapies that are physically able to be done, and you don't pay a penny to it. And it's something that baffles me about how the health services in other countries works, or in most cases doesn't work. The fact that if you're in America and you have a car accident, that can bankrupt you, that's ridiculous. And nobody here thinks twice about it. And my family has given a lot for the NHS. Both my mum and my auntie worked their entire careers in the NHS. And they're both retired now and are having a well-deserved retirement. And my family owes a hell of a lot to the NHS, because without the NHS, my dad wouldn't be here because he's a type 1 diabetic. And there's no way that we'd be in the situation that we're in, being able to lead the lives that we lead in somewhere like America, because the insurance premiums for my dad's medicines that he has to have or he will die would be astronomical. And when my uncle had a motorbike crash not long after I had mine, the NHS brought him back to life on the side of the road, and they saved his life, and now he's able to get up and walk around and spend time with his family because the NHS saved him. I'm able to walk around and spend time with my family and my friends because the NHS is there. It is our most valuable asset here in the UK. It's worth so much to so many, and there is a very real possibility that the Tories are going to sell it off. And a lot of people who voted Tory have said, no, it's just scaremongering, but within 24 hours of the Tories being announced as the majority winners in this election, one of their MPs was saying how cheap health insurance was. Never been a subject before. And that is worrying. There is no ifs, ands or buts. That is scary. That we can lose something as valuable as the NHS. And even if I hadn't had any treatment from the NHS, and I've had a lot over the years, I really have. I've had stays in mental health hospitals, and I've had surgeries, and I've had many broken bones plastered and sorted out, and dislocations put back in place, and medications given. But even if I hadn't, paying a little bit of my paycheck every month to an organisation as amazing as the NHS, so it meant that someone that I've never met before, and someone I never will meet, gets the treatment for cancer that they need so they can spend more time with their family. That's worth it. That's worth paying a little bit out of my paycheck for. Sure, I don't know them. Sure, I'll never meet them, I'll never shake their hand. But it means that a father can spend time with his children, a mother can spend time with her children. Kids can meet their grandparents and hear stories about how things were. And the idea of it being sold off by the Tories is what's got so many people irate. And it all, as it inevitably does these days here in the UK, comes back down to Brexit. That stupid referendum from 4 years ago. The stupid referendum that was sold to people on lies. And again, Boris Johnson and the Tories, who were pushing for Brexit, £350 million for the NHS. They had it on the side of a bus, went around all their campaigns. Not a penny of it has been seen by the NHS. Immigration. There's too many immigrants coming into the country. No, there isn't. We rely on immigration here in the UK. It's so unbelievably important for our infrastructure to have people from other countries working jobs that we're either not willing to work or not qualified to work. The argument that foreigners are coming over here and taking our jobs, well, I'm sorry, but the orthopaedic surgeons who worked on me, not one of them was born in England or Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland. They were born in the Middle East. And they've come over here and they have trained to be surgeons. And they spend their entire day fixing the people in this country. I can't do that. I'm a smart guy, but I'm not a surgeon, I'm not a doctor, but they are. And I see it every day, in person and online, people shouting, tapping away on the keyboard, that they should all just go home. This is their home, you racist, xenophobic pricks. And unfortunately, I think that's what a big chunk of the Conservative vote has become. It's become about race. It's become about xenophobia. It's become about homophobia, transphobia. That person isn't white, therefore we don't want to live next door to them. I think that's a lot of the problem. And for the Tories that are saying it's not, then why is our current Prime Minister on record saying about people with watermelon smiles and who look like they're a letterbox because they're wearing a burqa. How is that acceptable? It's 2019, it's nearly 2020. This isn't the dark ages. I really honestly believe that people in 70, 80, 90 years time will look back at 2019 the same way we look back at the 1930s in Germany now and think, how did that happen? How did they let it happen? And this is why there are protests already. It's Sunday night when I'm recording this, and the vote results were announced on Friday. There have already been riots in London protesting this because so many of the Tories' campaigns and claims have been proven to be lies. 88% of the adverts they put out, once fact-checked, were proven to be lies. But I don't like Jeremy Corbyn, I don't like brown people, so I'm going to vote against Labour. Jeremy Corbyn, who, by the way, on the 10th of December was awarded a Peace Prize, wasn't reported in the British news. I only found out today. He didn't make a big song and dance about it. He didn't go, I've won this Peace Prize, vote for me. He graciously said thank you, and he carried on doing what he's done for the last 35 years, which is try and make this country a better place to live for everyone, not just the rich, not just the poor, but for everyone. And now this gets me onto the crux of the matter, the people who are saying, well, the Tories have won, deal with it. No. Do you really think that if Labour had won, the Tories would be stood by? Do you really think Nigel Farage and his ilk would have just stood by? No, they'd have done the exact same thing. And we know that because they were so concerned they weren't going to get the majority of the vote on the Brexit referendum that before the results had even been counted, they'd put in a claim to resit and redo the vote. The problem isn't that people don't want to accept that their side lost, because that isn't the point. The point is that a lot of the people who voted for the Tories have been spouting round to Labour supporters, to Lib Dem supporters, to SNP supporters, to people on the left of politics and saying, haha, you lost. No, we all lost. This wasn't a case of winning or losing. This was our opportunity to make things better. This was our chance to stand up and be counted, and 10.8 million of us did. And the media's saying that Jeremy Corbyn's lost in a landslide. It's the worst Labour result ever. Yet, it's the highest amount of votes that Labour have ever gotten in a general election. And it just so happens that a lot of these media outlets that are reporting that this is the worst Labour result since the Victorian era are owned and operated by friends of Tory MPs. And the ones who aren't, Guardian, Independent, even the Daily Mirror, have called it as they've seen it. That's why there's protests. It's not because we've lost, it's because everyone has lost. And we've lost on a lie. 88% of the adverts and the campaign that the Conservatives put forward has been proven to be false. The last 9 years of Conservative government have proven to be weak and ineffectual for the people of this country. If the Tories wanted to properly fund the NHS, why haven't they done it in the last 9 years they've been in power? Why haven't they upped the funding? Why haven't they hired more police and put more of an emphasis on jobs like policing, the fire service, nursing? A lot of the armed forces have voted Tory this time round because Corbyn is a IRA sympathiser. It hasn't been Labour who's cut the funding to the armed forces. It wasn't Labour who have been sending out soldiers into war zones with equipment that doesn't work, with weapons that jam constantly. That was the Tories. And here's the really fun part. The people who have voted against the Tories, we've not only been doing that, but we've also been preparing for them to get into power. Not only have we been voting against them and protesting them and trying to expose them for the liars that they are, but we've also been preparing our personal lives and our home lives. So we're ready for when everything goes wrong. We're prepared as we can be. We're mobilising in force to stock food banks and homeless shelters with the things that they need for the poor, because the next 5 years are going to see the poor in the UK really suffer. So if you want to go ahead and say you've won, congratulations, but we don't believe you. We don't believe what you're saying to us about what your plans are, and we don't believe you that the country's going to be better. But we do have 3 words for you. Prove us wrong. If you voted for the Tories, that's entirely your right to do so, but hold them to account. They promised to fully fund the NHS. Hold them to that. Don't sit back as they give you excuse after excuse after excuse like they have for the past 9 years. Hold them to account and prove us wrong. You call us snowflakes, you call us Antifa thugs, call us what you want. Prove us wrong. Go out there and show us that we should have trusted Boris Johnson, that we should have trusted the Tories, and the world is going to see how great Britain really is. Prove us wrong. Back up your bullshit. Hold the party that you have voted for to account, and make sure that what they've told you is true and it actually happened. That we are going to be prosperous, that the NHS will be funded, that police forces will be properly funded, that corruption in police forces will be stamped out, because these are all promises that have been made. But if you don't hold these people to account, and if you fail to make sure that they give what they said they were going to give to this country, do not come crying to us, begging for our help, because the only thing you will be told is we told you so. We're going to look after the poor. We're going to look after the people who need to be looked after. And you're damn right we're going to keep on shouting and protesting every racist bit of propaganda that these people put out, because it's not acceptable. And we hold people to a higher account. I'm not saying that the Labour Party are perfect. Like every group, there are toxic individuals in there. But at least when Jeremy Corbyn said he was going to fund the NHS, he could look at the interviewer, because he would have. He'd have done everything within his power to put money into the NHS, because it's what he's been campaigning for the last 35 years. Boris Johnson and Donald Trump have been very buddy-buddy recently. Here in the UK, Trump is another word for fart. Over in the Americas, they have another word for Johnson. But right now, it's late. I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm frustrated with the country that I live in, the people who live here with me, and my own inability to design graphics that I actually like to put on my motorbike. I've tried to keep politics out of this channel, but I couldn't not continue without talking about this, because it's not a case of personal politics, it's a case of people's lives. But for now, I've been the Viking. About a third of the people out there have been awesome. Make sure you look after each other, and I'll see you next time.